gunned down a healthcare honcho worth millions of dollars in plain sight. An early morning assassination of Father Brian Thompson in Manhattan to address a large congregation of fellow executives. I'm Nancy Grace. Thanks for being with us. With me, an all-star panel to further analyze what we know, straight out to Joseph Scott Morgan, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, and star of a hit series, Body Bags, with Joe Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, again, I can't stress enough how amateurish I think the shooting was. You see the perp adopting I guess he's watched too many James Bond movies, somewhat of a professional shooter stance, but it's not a pro stance. We see him with an easily identifiable and expensive camera backpack. He is not wearing gloves. He leaves behind a water bottle and a candy wrapper. He chooses a spot directly in front of a surveillance camera. I mean, and of all things, the bullets are engraved with the words deny, defend, depose. This ain't a pro, Joe Scott. Help me out.
Yeah, it looks to me, Nancy, like this person just really doesn't care. I submit to you that there might be an element here of this individual wanting to be caught for whatever reason because they did such a poor job of
you know what, Joe
masking
Scott?
themselves,
I'm going to go
Nancy.
to a shrink if I want a story within a story within a story that he did all this. He assassinated somebody, but he wants to be caught. If that were so, he would just pull down that mask. Hey, Bernarda Villalona with me, high-profile criminal defense attorney in this jurisdiction, former prosecutor. Bernarda, I don't think this guy wanted to be caught. I think he's trying really hard to be a pro.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you can see the mistakes that he made with one, leaving the shell casings and the bullets there. But also, let's just remember that when they conduct the autopsy of Brian Thompson, and if the bullets are still inside of his body, that also will be able to see if there's any etching on those bullets. But this is New York City. The biggest mistake he made is that he did it so early in the morning, because by doing it early in the morning, it's easier to track him with all the video cameras in the area.
Hey, Bernarda, you've seen Home Alone, Lost in New York, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes, I have.
Remember how Kevin just disappears into the crowd, right?
There's no crowd at 6 in the
Doing
morning.
it so early in the morning makes that impossible. And if this guy's on a city bike, really, what did he do? Pay for it with a credit card and then lounging around in Starbucks, begging to be spotted? But I mean, come on, who chomps down on a Starburst and throws down a bottle of water and then commits a murder? Nobody.
Yeah, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right to me. There's so many flaws in this act that he carried out. But the city bike is the one that gets me, because I ride city bikes all the time and it's docked. So literally you have to have a credit card to be able to pull out the bike, unless he was planning to already have the city bike already checked out. But then again, you had to have some form of payment in order to get that city bike off. And we want to see whether that cell phone that was recovered belonged to him, because if that cell phone belonged to him, that would give us a lot of insight as to what's going on.
Come on, you know, they're pulling all of the credit cards that used a Citibank, and they're looking for Joe Doe out of Maple Grove, Minnesota. They are looking for anybody that came into the city a few days before from Minnesota. I mean, this guy, I'm telling you, he may have cased it out. He may have practiced and traced his steps over and over. I'm sure he did. But this is not a homegrown killer. This is an import. I'm telling you, Bernarda, no way.
Exactly. This is not a homegrown killer. But also, what I want to see is that there has to have been inside information for him to know the exact time when Mr. Thompson was going to leave that hotel. Because we're talking about that he left the hotel over an hour before the conference was going to start. And also to know the exit of the hotel that he was going to take, because there are multiple ways to get out of that hotel.
I'm curious. Joining me, in addition to high-profile lawyer Bernardo Villalona, Lauren Collins is with me, investigative reporter, co-host Primetime Crime on YouTube. Lauren, thanks for being with us. How many days had the victim been in town, and had he gone to the conference before that morning?
Yes, Brian Thompson arrived in New York City on Monday, and the conference, I believe, was set to begin on Tuesday. But to Bernardo's point, this seems to be an inside job, because how would he know that Brian Thompson was going to arrive so early when he was set to speak at 8 a.m.?
Well, wait a minute. Wait. Hold on, everybody. Bill Daly, you're intimately familiar with this area, as is Lauren, as am I. Bill, execs, they can't wait to get in there and mingle and sniff around with each other, see who's making the most money. I guarantee you there was going to be some kind of a coffee, breakfast thingy that morning, which may very well have been publicized. You know how you go into a conference and they have a big timesheet up there telling you the itinerary, the series of events. Any ding-dong could walk through the lobby and read that. And because I am learning that the victim had been there for a couple of days, he had probably been attending the conference at least one day in advance of his speaking. So all the perp would have to do is watch the guy walk out the same door. We're creatures of habit, whether people like to admit that about themselves or not. If he, the victim, had determined this was the route he always took, then that's the route he would take that morning.
Well, that's kind of the assuming. I'm not too sure whether the conference did take place on Monday as well. We know it was scheduled to take place, and he was supposed to speak and be part of the conference starting that morning when he was shot. Again, it does go to some pre-planning. We talk about this. We talk about some level of understanding as to the movements of this executive. If it was someone who just came into New York for a couple of days, that's a lot to kind of pull together really quickly, because especially he's staying around the corner, as I mentioned, at the Marriott Hotel. He was not staying at the Hilton Hotel. And there are a number of different pathways he could have taken to get to the entrance to the Hilton Hotel, and it didn't mean walking down that side street. So yes, if he had been there the day before, if this person assumed that he was a creature of habit and came back the same way, maybe. But there's something else here that suggests to me that there was some early information that he had, whether it was obtained through some surreptitious means or what have you, that he knew where that executive was staying and that when he would be leaving. It's too coincidental that he was around the corner sipping water and maybe having a candy bar at Starbucks, maybe a few minutes, 15 minutes or so before the shooting, and then just happens to be there at the time that he starts to, Mr. Thompson arrives by that side door to the Hilton Hotel.
To Joe Scott Morgan joining me, Professor of Forensics, Jacksonville State University. Joe Scott, anyone that had access to his itinerary would know exactly where he was going, exactly where or if there was a coffee or a breakfast buffet or a meeting planned for before his presentation. That would all be on his private itinerary. Anybody could have gotten their hands on that works at the same place, right? Just hack right into the executive assistant's computer. People in his family may have that itinerary. If he's got a driver to drive him around Manhattan, they would have the itinerary. A lot of people would have that itinerary and know that he was going early. I'd like to find out if there was an event that morning that he was attending before he spoke. But a lot of people could get access to an itinerary.
Yeah, they can. And depending upon how long this has been in the works, a guy that's this busy in his life and is in this echelon, his day many times is planned out minute to minute. They go from meeting to meeting to meeting. And so this is something that would have involved a lot of planning relative to his day. Now, who would have access to those databases? And you mentioned some people for consideration here, but I think a lot of it goes back to UnitedHealthcare relative to, have they published this? This guy's like a star. in their, in their world. Well, oh my gosh, we want to be wherever Mr. Thompson is going to be speaking. So he's going to be a high profile person, because if you're talking about the value of the company, perhaps this is incredible information for somebody to have access to. And anybody that's looking to do him harm, this will be a gold mine for them.
But to go to the effort, Scott Eicher, to engrave the words deny, defend, and depose on the bullets, that's not a pro. That is personal.
I agree, it's personal, and I think he's making a statement. If you realize those words are common words by the insurance industry, the terms delay, deny, defend, all that is a common term by them, and he's writing it on the bullets that he uses to kill the CEO of a major health firm.
And who would write depose? Depose. Who? That sounds legal, like a deposition. Bill Daly joining me, former FBI forensic photography expert. Bill Daly, who would write depose on a bullet?
Well, Nancy, there's some suggestion that those three words are the title of a book printed back in 2010, I believe, that talked about the insurance industry, about how they deny claims, and about how there's kind of a denial of pay. And so we believe it could have been taken off of that, if that's how we kind of want to look at this, because of the connection with the insurance industry, Mr. Thompson, his position, etc. So yes, it's not a word that unless you're in law enforcement, you're in legal, so you've been deposed, that you're necessarily going to use, unless you gleaned it off of something that had meaning to this assassination.
Interesting, Bill. The title of the book that was published back in 2010 is Delay, Deny, Defend, and of course written by Jay Feynman. The words on the bullet: deny, defend, depose. Mm-hmm. Curious. What about that, Bill?
Well, again, if somebody is a kind of quote a student, either they've learned the hard way because they've been up against insurance companies, or they've been following what insurance companies they believe have been wronging the public in doing, and they realize that people who are subject to perhaps challenging these insurance companies are going to have to file a lawsuit, and the lawsuit may require a deposition. I'm probably sure that somewhere in that book is that word is there. I haven't read the book, but I could probably. It sounds as though it all has that same kind of leaning, but I think it's something that somebody could easily discern. But again, I think it suggests someone who's also a bit more, let's say, more quote educated, somebody who is kind of aware of the industry, aware of things that are involved in perhaps legal proceedings and things that may be brought against the insurance carrier. So I think it's still all connected, but I think it does show a certain level of understanding, quote education about the industry, and I think that's where the tie-in is right there, Nancy.
Another issue to Dr. Cheryl Errett joining me, clinical forensic psychologist at AskDrCheryl.com. Cheryl, thank you for being with us. We were earlier talking about alleged threats on the victim. He is estranged from his wife. They live in two separate, really beautiful homes in Maple Grove, Minnesota. She knew about the threats. We understand the threats were never reported to police. However, I'm getting word that the UnitedHealthcare group, the parent company of UnitedHealthcare, was aware of certain threats against executives. I don't know if these were the same threats that she alluded to against her husband, but I would assume that that type of threat is SOP, standard operating procedure, for execs that are pulling down $10, $15, $20 million a year.
You would think, you would think with how incredibly profitable companies like this have been that they might allocate some things to protect their executives. This algorithm has systematically denied care for lots of people. I think UnitedHealthcare is the #1 denier of claims. I think they have the highest rate of denied claims. So when we're thinking also about personal motive, of course, first we look at the family, but we also may, in the activist, the competing kind of motive, it could be very personal if someone had a family member who died because they didn't get care, or they didn't get approval for some treatment they needed, or these kinds of activists. There may be some people who are very taking things very personally and highly motivated in that narrative as well. So this is what the investigations are really going to tell us about what is happening here.
Here's another thing, Joe Scott Morgan, trying to piece the forensic pieces of the puzzle together. This was the investor conference of 2024, and there was, in fact, a breakfast that morning starting at 7, followed by a general session 8 to 10:30 and breaking off for seminars at 10:45. Bottom line, I guarantee you that breakfast starting at 7 a.m. was publicized. I mean, if I can find out about it, anybody can find out about it by just going online. What about that, Joe Scott?
Yeah, I mean, anybody could get access to this information, Nancy. You just think about like the company portal, that area where you enter in and you can get any kind of daily updates on people, where they're going to be, how they're going to be tracked. And then this will just be pushed out, this list for these attendees, and it'll probably be posted on the wall. I mean, I've been to, I don't know, 100 of these things over the course of my career. And, the people that are putting them together, they'll take a hard copy and slap them on the walls all over the place. They're laying on tables. And of course, everybody now gets information on their phone as well. They want to make sure that butts are in the seats for these things. It would not also surprise me if this individual that perpetrated this may have walked into the lobby beforehand just to kind of case it out, see what it looked like in there, and then step back out. I don't know. Maybe that happened. Maybe it happened the day before. But this information would have been out there, and certainly the killer could have had access to it.
I mean, sitting here, Jackie just typed in UnitedHealthGroup.com, and the whole thing came up. So it's not hard. Again, this is not a pro. Everything indicates, from leaving behind a cell phone to a water bottle to a candy wrapper, taking a pro stance is not professional at all. This is an amateur that has read a lot of spy books. But who would go to the trouble to engrave the bullets? We wait as justice unfolds. If you know or think you know, if you saw or think you saw or heard anything, if you spotted this guy on the subway or elsewhere with that $300 photography backpack, please dial 1-800-577-TIPS, 1-800-577-8477. We've talked a lot about his profession, that he and his wife are estranged, but remember, he is the father of 2 boys that need answers. Goodbye, friend. Please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve unsolved homicides. If you're on the go, catch us on your favorite podcast app, where you can get all of our content, where we, in our own way, seek justice.